Subscribe to Mantold for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. I had just heard the doctor say I had a chance to live, and 2 hours later, my wife was gone. That night, the hospital hallway was so bright it almost hurt my eyes. The doctor looked straight at me, voice urgent. "Chase, we found a matching heart. Surgery in 48 hours. If we miss this, the chance is gone." I kept nodding. My heart was racing, like it knew it was about to be replaced. The moment I stepped out of the hospital, I called Emily. "I have news. I'm at a parent-teacher meeting. We'll talk tonight." Click. I didn't think much of it. I was too happy. So happy. I stopped to buy flowers on the way home. I wanted her to open the door, smile at me, and hold me tight. But when I unlocked the apartment, something felt cold. Her perfume still lingered in the air. A coffee cup on the table, still faintly steaming, but half the closet was empty. Our wedding photo, gone from the shelf. On the table, a white envelope. Inside, just a few shaky words. "I can't do this anymore. Don't call me." My hands trembled. Next to the note, a plane ticket to Florida, 1 seat, departing at 9 p.m. In the passenger name box, clear as day, Emily R. Steele. I sank into the chair, not because my heart hurt. The meds were still keeping it beating steady, but because it felt like everything inside me was draining away. 48 hours to save my life, and just a few to lose the person I thought would walk with me to the end. Outside, the sky darkened fast, like someone had flipped a switch. In the distance, the roar of a plane, and I knew the flight carrying Emily out of my life had already started to roll. I thought I'd just stepped past death's door, but maybe it had only just opened in another way. The armchair by the window is still there, but it's been months since I last saw Emily sitting in it, reading in the afternoon light. The sunset still hits that corner, laying a warm golden glow over the old checkered fabric. But the empty seat feels like a reminder of the growing silence between us. My name is Chase Steele, 35, a master welder in a small Ohio town. The day I earned my license, my father clapped me on the shoulder. "Keep your hands steady, son, and you'll feed a family for life." I tried to do just that until my heart betrayed me. I have dilated cardiomyopathy, a genetic curse I never chose, but have to carry forever. 2 years ago, the doctor told me, without a transplant, I'd be lucky to see 40. Since then, I've lived with an invisible countdown clock in my chest. Emily came into my life like a beam of light, cutting through the dark welding shop. That day, I was fixing the iron gate at a preschool. She walked by, a young teacher in a floral dress, hair neatly tied, arms full of books. She smiled and asked, "Do you fix hearts too?" A joke that we would repeat every year on our anniversary. We fell in love fast, married a little over a year later. The early years were simple and whole. Weekends fishing at the lake, painting the walls of our small condo, the balcony filled with bright red geraniums Emily tended every morning. I worked overtime at the shop. She taught her classes. Some nights, we'd cook together and play old records. Then, my illness slowly turned those nights into hospital trips. One evening, after a long day, I was out of breath carrying my toolbox. Emily left her class halfway and rushed me to the ER. She held my hand and said firmly, "You're going to live. We're going to live." But reality isn't just about promises. Bills piled up. Insurance didn't cover it all. I cut back on work to stay healthy. Income dropped. Emily started taking on extra work, grading papers, tutoring at night. There were dark circles under her eyes. About a year ago, she started talking more about moving to Columbus. A bigger city, better opportunities. I said no. I'm used to it here, and with my condition, moving far isn't simple. She went quiet, then gave me a faint smile. But from that day, her eyes never looked at me the same. After that, I started noticing things. She came home later, said she was stuck at school, or had extra tutoring hours. Her phone always face down, notifications off. Dinner was still there, but the conversations got shorter, like two polite strangers sharing a table, instead of husband and wife. Once, I told her about a trainee at the shop who dropped an entire steel plate on his boot and walked away without a scratch, thanks to safety boots. I thought she'd laugh, like she used to. But Emily just gave a faint smile, eyes already back on her laptop screen. I knew I'd become a burden. The meds, the checkups, the last-minute plan changes when I felt too weak. As a man, I was used to solving problems, protecting the one I love. But this illness turned me into someone who could only watch. I took on extra shifts, even though the doctor told me to slow down. When the pain stabbed my chest, I'd take a deep breath and keep welding. At home, I hid some of the bills, so Emily wouldn't worry. One winter night, I came home later than usual after an extra shift. The table was set for two, but Emily's chair was empty. In the kitchen, the soup was cold, the tiny birthday candles on the cake unlit. It was our wedding anniversary. I waited until almost midnight before I heard the key turn. Emily stepped in, hesitating. I forgot. Today. Then a weak smile. Guess I was just too tired. I didn't blame her, just nodded. But deep down, I knew we had just crossed a line and it would be hard to go back. A few weeks later, the hospital called. I was officially on the heart transplant list. The odds were slim, but it was the biggest hope I'd had in 2 years. I told Emily while she was stacking books on the table. She just said, "That's good," and went back to her papers. I stood there, still holding the letter, feeling like I'd just shared a dream with someone who no longer wanted to hear it. That night, when she was asleep, I stepped out onto the balcony. The red geraniums were still there, but the soil was dry and cracked. Emily had never forgotten to water them before. I touched a leaf and thought of what she said the first year we were married. "As long as you live, these flowers will bloom." I don't know when that promise started to fade, but I know these signs aren't random. The phone buzzed 3 times. The hospital's number lit up on the screen. The doctor's voice came fast, urgent. "Chase, we've found a matching heart. You need to check in within 48 hours. If you miss it, the chance is gone." I froze. 2 years of waiting, wondering if I'd ever hear these words before my old heart gave out. And now, here it was, a chance to live. I called Emily right away. The phone rang. "I have news. I'm in a parent-teacher meeting. Let's talk tonight." Her voice was short, rushed. "But this is tonight." "Okay. I have to get back to class." Click. I held the phone tight, listening to the empty tones spill into silence. Told myself, she must really be busy. It's fine. Tonight, we'll talk. We'll cry together out of relief. After my final tests, the nurse said I could go home for one night before checking in. On the way, I stopped at a flower shop. Bought a bouquet of red geraniums, the kind Emily once said was red like blood, but as strong as we are. The apartment door was ajar. I pushed it open. Darkness and silence poured out like water from a broken jar. Half the closet was empty. Our wedding photo, gone. The drawer where Emily kept my letters from when we first met, empty. On the table, a white envelope. My hands shook as I pulled out the note inside. A few messy words. "I can't do this anymore. Don't call me." I read it once. Didn't believe it. Read it again. Each word cutting deeper into my skin. Beside it, a plane ticket to Florida. One way. Today. Departure. 9 p.m. And there, in the passenger name box, something that froze my blood. Not just Emily R. Steele, but in faint print below, Mr. Daniel Cross, Compy. 2 seats. I looked around. The coffee cup on the table was still warm. Her beige scarf draped over the chair, one end touching the floor. On the balcony, the red geraniums wilted. The room had never been this quiet. The ticking clock suddenly too loud, each beat counting down. I tried to summon anger, but there was none, only a cold emptiness spreading from my chest. Outside, the sky darkened fast. Rain began to fall, each drop tapping the glass like a farewell. I didn't call, didn't text, just sat there, eyes fixed on the clock. 9 p.m. I looked out the window. The night was thick, far away, the muffled roar of an airplane. And I knew the flight carrying Emily and a part of my life had left the ground. I stayed in the dark, the clock still ticking down. The bouquet of red geraniums sat untouched on the table, each petal like a promise left behind, burning red in the cold room. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over her name in my contacts. One tap, and I could hear her voice again. But what would that voice say now? An apology? Or nothing at all? I set the phone down, face first on the table. The next morning, I checked into the hospital as scheduled. At the reception desk, the nurse slid a form toward me. "Emergency contact, please." My pen paused at the word spouse. I crossed out Emily's name, slowly wrote, "Ellis Moore, a friend from high school." Each stroke of the pen, cutting into something deep inside. In my room, I lay staring at the blank white ceiling, trying not to think. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Stopping outside my door, my heart sped up. Partly for the surgery ahead, partly because I thought, maybe. The door opened. A young nurse wheeled in a cart of medicine, not Emily. I pressed my lips together, nodded a greeting, and turned my face to the wall. That afternoon, a friend from the shop visited. He set a fruit basket on the table, glanced around, then asked, "Where's Emily?" "She's not. She's busy." I cut him off. Lying had never been this easy. Night fell. I drifted in and out of shallow sleep, until I dreamed I was standing on the balcony. Emily was there, watering the geraniums, smiling. "As long as you live, these flowers will bloom." I reached for her, but just before my fingers touched, she and the flowers turned into red dust, carried away by the wind. I woke, cold sweat soaking my shirt. The next morning, the doctor came in. "Surgery's at 9 a.m. and day after tomorrow. You need to stay as calm as possible." I nodded, but my mind held one question I couldn't answer. Why couldn't she wait? One quiet evening, I heard laughter from the next room. A patient's family talking. Someone holding a hand, someone whispering comfort. I turned to the chair beside my bed, still empty, the place where Emily should have been. Surgery day. The operating lights burned white and cold. As the anesthesia pulled my eyelids shut, the last thing I saw was that empty chair by my bed. When I woke, everything blurred into harsh lights, my throat dry, burning. And the moment my memory returned, I knew the surgery had worked, but what I'd lost was never coming back. During recovery, someone asked, "Now that you have a new heart, what's the first thing you'll do?" I smiled faintly, but didn't answer, because I knew the answer wasn't the same anymore. 3 weeks after surgery, I was still in the hospital for observation. The doctor said I was recovering fast, but my mind wasn't. One afternoon, walking slowly down the hallway, I heard the phone ring at the nurse's station. On the screen, Emily R. "Steele, incoming call." My chest tightened. My fingers gripped the railing without thinking. "You're not going to answer?" the nurse asked. I shook my head. "If she's calling, it means she needs something." "I'm not ready to answer." Discharge day. Ellis, my friend from high school, drove me back to the apartment. Inside, the air still smelled like something left behind. The bouquet of geraniums on the table had turned crisp and dry. I dropped it into the trash, not daring to look too long. Ellis helped me clean the kitchen cabinets. When he opened the top shelf, he found a sealed envelope. Inside, our condo contract. Co-owners, Chase Steele and Emily R. "Steele, what are you going to do with this?" Ellis asked. I stayed silent. Her name was still there on paper, even if, in life, she had already moved on. 2 days later, an email from a lawyer arrived. Representing Mrs. Emily R. Steele, I would like to discuss the division of assets. Response deadline, 10 days. No question about my health, just money and a ticking clock. That night, I unlocked my phone to look for a file. Accidentally, the voicemail inbox appeared. One saved message, dated a year ago. I pressed play. Emily's voice came through, bright, with a hint of laughter. "If you're hearing this, it means you forgot your lunch again." I left it on the kitchen counter. "Love you." I sat still. The room felt drained of air. That voice used to be ordinary. Now, it cut like glass. The next day, a package arrived from Florida. Sender, E. Steele. I cut the tape. Inside, a shirt I'd left behind on a beach trip, folded neatly. No note, as if she was only returning an item, and nothing else. That evening, Ellis came by with an envelope. "You should see this," he said. Inside, a printed photo. Emily and Daniel Cross, standing in front of a Florida apartment, holding a set of keys. Behind them, a sign, "Welcome home." I set the photo down, took a deep breath. No anger, just a slow, cold tide rising inside me. Reaching for my coat in the closet, I touched a small wooden box. Emily's old keepsake. It used to hold our first movie ticket, a Valentine's note, a photo by the lake. Now, only half a photo remained. The torn edge jagged, my face still there, standing alone. Beside me, emptiness. Empty, cold, still. 2 days after the torn photo, the phone rang. Hospital. Chase, your blood work shows the anti-rejection meds aren't stable yet. You need to come back within 48 hours. 48 hours. The same deadline to respond to Emily's lawyer. 2 clocks, counting down at once. One for my body, one for my life. That night, I dreamed of June 12th last year, our anniversary. We were at a rented beach house. Emily in a white dress, smiling as I promised. As long as I'm breathing, you'll never have to look for another home. Now, I was holding the Florida property deed, signed June 12th, the day I was on the operating table. The next morning, while making coffee, a knock on the door. A downstairs neighbor handed me a misdelivered envelope. Florida Real Estate Company logo in bold. Inside, a purchase contract. Emily and Daniel Cross's signatures side by side. The ink still fresh. The date said it all. I set it down, breathing deep. But in my head, only one thought remained. She'd found another home long ago. That afternoon, Ellis came again, this time with a newspaper. He opened to the society page. In the corner, a photo from a charity gala in Florida. Emily in a red dress, Daniel beside her. The smile? That used to be mine. I didn't want to show you, Ellis said. But maybe. It's better, you know. That night, I opened my laptop to check the condo contract. A notification popped up. Voicemail from Emily R. Steele, 10 seconds. I played it. Background noise from an airport. Then her voice, Chase. If you're hearing this, then The line cut off. No explanation. The next day, at the hospital for my checkup, someone walked past. Her perfume? Exactly the scent Emily used to wear. I turned, heart pounding. She was rounding the corner. I stepped forward, almost touching her shoulder. She turned. Not Emily. A stranger with unfamiliar eyes. Carrying the same scent. I stepped back, forcing a smile. Inside, the hollow drop felt endless. The doctor handed me the results. You need complete rest for a few weeks. Avoid stress. I gave a faint smile. Stress was the only thing I couldn't avoid. Back home, I opened a drawer. Buried deep inside, a birthday card I'd meant to give Emily, but never did. That year, I'd forgotten her birthday. Buried in a big project. She never said a word. But I knew. Something in her eyes dimmed that day. Maybe the cracks started there. I sat at the table. In front of me, all the pieces left behind. Half a photo, the condo contract, the package from Florida, the unsent letter, the 10-second voicemail. They sat there, silent, waiting for me to decide whether to piece them together for answers or throw them all away to forget. I closed my eyes, but instead of darkness, I saw only a white, empty space where Emily used to stand. A week after my follow-up, a courier envelope arrived. No return name, just a Florida postmark. Inside, a silver USB stick and a small note. You need to hear this. The handwriting slanted, not Emily's. Daniel Cross. I plugged it in. One audio file, wind rushing in the background. Then Daniel's voice, slow, rough. Chase, I know you don't want to hear from me, but you should know. Emily didn't leave you just because of me. She thought you wouldn't make it through the surgery. I shot up from my chair, gripping the table. Daniel continued. Before you went into the OR, Emily heard from someone, a distant relative of mine who works at the hospital, that your odds were under 20%. She panicked. Said if the surgery failed, she couldn't stand to watch you disappear. I only came after. A pause. Then, believe it or not, that's up to you. But tonight, 8 p. me. You come to the address I sent. After that, maybe you'll understand. The file ended. I stood there, my heart pounding. Anger, doubt, and a thin, stubborn thread of hope twisting together. If he was telling the truth, everything I believed might be wrong. If it was a lie, this was just another game. I stepped out onto the balcony, breathing deep. Rain had started. Streetlights flickered through the water, beating in time with my heart. 8 p.m. An address in the suburbs. If I went, I'd face Emily. If I didn't, I might live with what if forever. Rain was falling harder when I got there. An old coffee shop, its wooden sign weathered to gray. Inside, the lights were still on. I stood at the door for a few seconds, my palms cold and wet. When I stepped in, the world seemed to narrow. Emily sat at the last table, her hair longer, her face thinner, her eyes still deep, but hiding something I couldn't read. She looked at me, and I heard my heartbeat in my ears, loud, heavy. Her perfume brushed past me. I swallowed hard. For a second, I wanted to turn away, but my feet carried me forward. I pulled out the chair. She didn't look at me, her fingers slowly turning a silver spoon in her coffee. The soft clink against the cup came in steady, irritating beats. "You listened to that recording?" Her voice barely above a whisper. I did. I kept my eyes on hers. But he only told me half. What's the other half? Emily lifted her gaze. Those eyes, once my home, were deep and tired now. The day before the surgery, I found out. Your chances were almost zero. I'd already lost my father to the same kind of operation. I couldn't watch the man I love vanish the same way. So I left, believing that if you lived, you'd forget me easier. And if you didn't, I'd keep you whole in my memory. I gave a bitter laugh, my hands gripping the chair. Whole in your memory, by signing a house deed with someone else. On our anniversary, she closed her eyes, set the spoon down, its soft tap landing like a period at the end of a heavy sentence. I know, that was the most cowardly thing I've ever done. I just wanted to cut it all clean. Before I came back out of weakness, I wanted to walk out right then. But when I saw her hands tremble, memories rushed back. Nights she sat by my hospital bed, holding my hand until the nurse forced her out. Part of me wanted to believe. The other part screamed, "Don't, Chase." Her voice broke. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I loved you. And if you'd called me back that day, even once, I would have stayed." The words hit me square in the chest. The whole cafe seemed to shrink, until there was only our table, and the space between us. I stood. The chair scraped back. Emily rose too, eyes wide, as if waiting for a miracle. I reached out, but didn't touch her. "Thank you for telling me. Now, let's end this. For real." I turned, stepping into the rain. It hit my face, icy cold. Behind me, I heard the cafe door close, a sound both final and breaking. I walked slowly down the street, without an umbrella, each step shedding another piece of memory. But her words, "If you'd called me back," echoed on, and I knew they'd outlast the rain. I got back to the apartment close to midnight, clothes soaked through, shoes leaving dark trails on the cold wooden floor. I didn't turn on the lights, just let the dim yellow glow from the hallway spill in, falling over what still sat on the table. Half a photograph, the condo contract, the package from Florida. They were no longer evidence, just relics from another life. A life I'd stepped out of, but kept looking back at. I opened a drawer, took out the small box. Inside, my wedding ring. Cold to the touch, I placed it in my palm, squeezing until my knuckles turned white. It felt like holding a piece of memory about to shatter. Finally, I put it back in the box, closing the lid slowly, like shutting a door. My phone buzzed. A text from Ellis. "You okay? Daniel just called. He wants to meet you." I stared at the screen longer than I needed to, then grabbed my coat. Some questions. If you don't ask them now, become ghosts. The next morning, the sky was still gray. Ellis's bar was empty. Daniel sat in the corner, a glass of whiskey catching the warm light. When he saw me, he gave a small nod, as if this were just two men talking. I didn't come here to drink. I sat down, keeping my hands on the table, but not too close. Daniel turned his glass, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm not sorry for loving Emily, but I am sorry for how it all happened, and for not stopping her." I felt my heart kick hard, but kept my voice steady. "You sent me that recording for what? Forgiveness? Or to unload your own guilt?" Daniel leaned in, his voice lower. "Because I wanted you to know, even when she was with me, she dreamed of you. She said your name when she thought I was asleep." The words hit like a sucker punch. I clenched my hands so tight, my nails almost broke skin. He drained his glass, set it down. "And one more thing. Emily's leaving Florida. Could be for good." I looked straight at him, searching for a lie. There wasn't one. But in his eyes, Something flickered. Not victory, not regret. Something harder to name. Daniel stood. Left some bills on the table. We won't see each other again, Chase. But if you want to see her one last time, this is your only chance. He walked out, leaving me alone. Beside my glass of water was a small envelope. Inside, a one-way ticket to Florida. Tomorrow. I sat in the bar a long time, the ticket lying in front of me. The warm light made it look like it was both inviting me and mocking me. Back home, I set the ticket next to the ring box. Two small objects, pulling me in opposite directions. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Emily's whisper, "If you'd called me back," and Daniel's voice cutting in, "She still dreamed of you." The next morning, I drove to the ocean. The sky was slate gray. Waves slammed against the rocks. I stood at the shore, the ring in my hand, cold, heavy. I threw it far. The metal flashed once, then vanished beneath the waves. But seconds later, I found myself in the water, letting the freezing surf cut into my skin. I groped through the icy dark until my fingers closed around the familiar band. Back on shore, I sat catching my breath, the ring trembling in my palm. "You really gonna go?" Ellis's voice came from behind. He stood there, hands in his coat pockets, like he already knew the answer. "I don't know," I said, my eyes still on the ring. Ellis sat beside me. "If you go just to find the version of Emily you want to believe in, you'll be disappointed. The only person you'll meet there is yourself." I said nothing. The waves kept hitting the rocks, again and again, reminding me some things never stop. We just learn to live with their sound. By nightfall, I was back in the apartment, the ticket and the ring box still there. I opened the box, placed the ring inside, then set the ticket in with it. Closed the lid. Not torn up, not sold. Just kept to remember there had been such a crossroads. Before turning out the light, I stepped onto the balcony. The city glowed under the night, and in one faraway window, a light went out. I stood there for a long time, listening to my heartbeat blend with the noise of the street. And I thought, maybe, somewhere, Emily had just turned her light off too. I woke earlier than usual. The sky was still misty, but the weight in my chest was lighter. The emptiness was still there, but it no longer demanded to be filled right away. I made a cup of black coffee, sat by the window. The city kept moving. Cars rushed past, as if nothing had happened last night. And I realized, our hearts can break, but the world doesn't wait. Maybe that's its way of telling us to keep walking. Ellis came by at noon, a brown envelope in his hand. He set it on the table. "You left this in my car yesterday," he said. I opened it. Inside, an old photograph. Me and Emily at the beach. Waves at our backs. Smiles without a trace of worry. I brushed my fingers over the corner of the photo, then set it down. "I thought about throwing it away," Ellis said. "But then I figured, this doesn't make you weaker. It just reminds you, you once loved." We sat in silence for a while. Then Ellis spoke. "6 years ago, I sat alone with my wedding ring in my hand. I threw it into the river. But 3 days later, I went back. Not to find the ring, but to stand in the same spot and realize I was still alive." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because I understood. That afternoon, I walked to the park. A little girl was learning to ride a bike, her father walking behind, holding the seat. When she found her balance, he let go. I saw myself, learning to walk alone, after a hand had let go. Back home, I opened the drawer, took out the ring and the plane ticket. No heaviness this time, just two objects, holding memories. I wrote a small note. "Don't forget, but don't go back." I placed it in the box with them. That night, I stepped onto the balcony. The city glowed under the dark. In the building across, a figure stood at the window, holding something small. Under the light, I saw it was a ring. They turned it a few times, then set it on the sill, letting the night wind carry it away. I didn't know who they were, didn't need to, but in that moment, it felt like a mirror, reminding me that everyone has something to let go. I went back inside, took a sip of cold coffee, and in my head, Ellis's words played, "We never leave a love story the same way we walked into it. But if we're brave enough, we walk out with a heart that knows who it is." My story with Emily was closed, but my life was still wide open.